Hi everyone, welcome to CodeTav Management. So today we will discuss about the Spring Dependency Injection. So we have already discussed about the Autowiring in the previous lecture. So if you have not visited yet, so just go to the Spring Code tutorial playlist and you can see there. So now the first question is like, what is the inversion of control or IOC? So inversion of control means IOC is basically a concept of the software engineering where the control of the objects or a block of the program is transferred to a container or framework. This inversion of control also allows a container to take the control of the flow of a program and make calls to our customer code rather than making the calls to a library. Okay. So to implement IOC, the Spring Dependency Injection concept is used. Okay. So next one is like, what is the Spring container? So in the Spring framework, the interface application context represents the Spring container. So the Spring container takes the responsibility of the instantiating, then configuring, then assembling the objects. Objects means here the Spring beans. Okay. So those so mainly the instantiating, configuring, assembling the objects. So basically manage the life cycles of that of the Spring Bean. So in order to create the beans, the Spring container takes help of configuration metadata, which can be in the form of either XML configuration or annotations. So Spring container is the short form of the Spring IOC container, right? And they are used interchangeably. So you can use the Spring IOC container either and also the Spring container as well. So they are used interchangeably. And for further, you can also use the spring.io, means that website. Means there you can also see the details of the Spring container. Okay. Next one is like, what is a Spring Bean? So in the context of the Spring framework, so an object which is managed basically instantiated, then configured and assembled, right, by the Spring container. This is mainly the Spring Bean. So Spring container manages the Spring Bean life cycle. So from the initiation to the date of a Spring Bean, whole the life cycle of a Spring Bean will be managed by the Spring container. Okay. So next is, what is the dependency in the Spring? So uh, you want to know about the Spring dependency injection. But before that, you also need to know about the dependency. What is the dependency in the Spring? Okay. So here you can see one example. Here the Java class invoice is there, right? And it's supporting the class. It's supporting class like a vendor class is there, and interface tax details is also there. So here you can see that invoice is a class which has various instance variables like this name of string type, then amount of double type, okay, then a list of items, okay, so those will be string, then so vendor is also there, and tax details, right? So if we want to create an object of invoice, so for that, here you can see like we need all the instance variables. So you can also say like instantiation of the class invoice that depends on all the instance variables which are created here, like name, amount, items, vendor, then tax details, right? So here you also know, right, in the context of the Spring, like this invoice class or bin has these 6 dependencies. So now different types of dependencies are there that the Spring container can inject. Okay. So those are basically the dependencies. Means the what the things like different types dependencies are there. Okay, so like here you can see like primitive type, collection type, reference type. Okay, so that type of these are basically the dependencies which you can use in the another class or something. Okay, so these are basically the dependencies. So this refers mainly the instance variables, right, or properties you can say. So like here invoice has the properties. These six properties are there, like name, amount, items, vendor, tax details. These five properties are there. You can see. So another classes can use that one. Okay. So for that reason, injection required, like at the rate inject annotations require, and through this dependency will be injected. Okay. Next is what is dependent bin in Spring. So when we talk about the Spring Dependency Injection, so it becomes important to know about like what is the dependent bin in the Spring. So we here we already have defined the invoice class as a bin in Spring, and it has the helper or supporting classes. Means supporting classes means the dependencies like vendor, then tax details, right? So invoice, here invoice is the target bin, right? And vendor is dependent bin. Okay, so a class or Spring bin that takes the support of other class. Okay, so that will be the target class or the main class. That's why invoice is the main class or target class, as it takes the support of other class like vendor and another interface tax details, and the class or the Spring bin that acts as a helper class to the other class. So tax details are the is the helper interface, or vendor you can say like it is the helper class of that invoice class. So that's why this vendor class is the helper class. Okay, so that helper class you can say like the dependent class. Okay, so dependent bin you can say, or you can see as the helper class as well. Okay, dependent class or helper class, and another one is target class. Okay, now which types of dependencies can a Spring container inject? So there are three types. Okay, like Spring container can inject dependencies if the dependent variables data type is any one of, like it can be primitive type, it can be collection type dependency, it can be reference type of dependency. So basically, based on the data type of the instance variables, we have these three type of dependencies. So first of all, the primitive type dependency. So if a variable has its data type from the below list, then the dependency is primitive type dependency. So like string is also considered as the primitive type in dependency. Like there are several type of dependencies. I can say like byte, sort, int, long, float, double, boolean, char, string. Those are basically the primitive type dependencies. Okay. So if a variable has any one of that type of data type from like byte, sort, int, long, float, double, boolean, char, string, so that will be your primitive type of dependency. That type of dependency you can say. Next one is like collection type dependency. So if a variable has its data type from the list, set, map, properties, okay, then that dependency is called collection type of dependency. Okay, so property is the class, but list, set, map, those are like the uh, interfaces. Okay, so they come under the Java util package. So those are like you can say collection type dependency. Then the reference type dependency. So if a variable is created using a class or interface, then as its data type, okay, then you can say it as the reference type dependency. Okay, so in that example, this string name double amount. These are primitive type dependency. Okay. Then list. So this is collection type dependency. And this vendor and tax details. These are reference type dependency, as these variables are created using the class or interface. Like vendor class is there and tax details interface is there, right? So I think it's clear to you, like the types of dependencies: primitive type, collection type, reference type. Okay. Now another one is there, like object dependency. Just a minute. Okay. So another one is also there, like object type dependency is also there. Maybe here it is not mentioned. So I'm saying, like, what is the object type dependency? So when an object depends on another object, then we call this dependency as the object dependency. So in fact, this is same as the reference type dependency. Okay, what I have explained here for this reference type dependencies. So for the Spring framework, when a bin depends on other bins, we also call bin dependency. Okay. So the parent bin is called the dependent bin, and the instance variables inside the bin are called the dependencies. Okay. After that, what is Spring Dependency Injection? So before explaining that Spring Dependency Injection, you also need to know, like, what is the injection. You know, right, what is the dependency. Now you also need to know, like, what is the injection. So injection suggests the inserting something, okay, into another thing. When you will insert something into another thing, that is basically the injection. So injection is the process of inserting values to variables while creating an object. So if we talk about the objects, the process of inserting one object into another object is called the injection. Okay. So now what is the Spring Dependency Injection? So Spring Dependency Injection is the feature of the core module of the Spring framework. Okay. So where the Spring container injects other objects into an object. So other objects are nothing but the dependencies. So those are dependencies, means the instance variables which are declared in the Spring bin, or you can say as declared in the class. Okay. Now, how many ways are there to implement Spring Dependency Injection? So there are basically two ways. The one is the XML based configuration, and there is Java annotation based configuration. But I will suggest you to use the Java based configuration. Okay, as it is more advanced, right? So next one is, what is auto wiring in Spring? So I have already made one detailed video for the auto wiring, but here also I am going to explain you. So what is the auto wiring? So Spring Container detects the relationship between the bins either by reading the XML configuration file or by scanning the Java annotations at the time of booting up the applications. So then it will create the objects and where the dependencies, right? So where the dependencies means connect the relationships between the objects. That is basically wiring the dependencies. So Spring Container does this process automatically. So it is referred to as the auto wiring. As automatically, that's why this nomenclature. Okay. So automatic wiring, that is the auto wiring. Okay. So developer only needs to provide the auto wired annotations at a specific place, and Spring Container will do all the things by itself, right? Then Autowire disambiguation is also there. Okay. Means if more than one bin of the same type is available in the container. So basically, when uh, this auto word annotation is there, so for that case, it will look for the specific type of bins. But there may be same type of many bins, right? So if more than one bin of the same type is available in the container, then the framework will throw a no unique bin definition exception. So I also explained this no unique bin definition exception in that auto wiring detailed explained video. So you can go there and check why this uh, exception occurs. Okay. So that basically indicates that more than one bin is available for auto wiring. So this is referred to as the Autowire disambiguations. Means when that uh, exception you will get, like no unique bin definition exception. Okay, means it is confused, like which bin it's need to auto-wire. Okay, so to resolve this conflict, we need to tell the Spring explicitly, like which bin we want to inject. So in order to handle this situation, we make use of primary annotations, qualifier annotations, okay, with the auto-word annotations. Along with that auto-word annotations, we also need to use the primary and qualifier annotations as well. Okay. So if you want to know about like how to use the qualifier and primary annotations, so you can see that auto-wiring full video playlist, means from that playlist, you can see that video. Or also I can make another video like how to use that qualifier and primary annotations, right? So now the next important question is like, what are the types of the Spring dependency injections? So basically there are mainly three ways. Okay, so first one is the setter based injection. Next is the constructor based injection, and the third one is fielder property based injection. Okay, so first one is setter based injection. So when the Spring container provides values to the variables using the setter method. So Spring container will provide the values to variables using the setter method. We call that setter based injections. Okay. So in this case, so Spring container uses the default constructor to create the object when the annotations auto word is used on the top of the class's setter method. Okay. So then it is known as the setter based dependency injection. So why here this component on this class vendor, inside that the dependencies are like code and name, then public class invoice is there, then private vendor, then just we have made, means we have written the auto word annotations on the this set vendor method, right? So as shown in this example, so vendor class has been created using the component annotations, right? So hence Spring container will automatically detect it while starting up the application and will create a bean object for the vendor class. So further, when the Spring container detects that the vendor bean object has been auto-wired, here you can see, right, using these auto-word annotations. So into the invoice class. So inside this invoice class, we have made the auto-word annotations on the set vendor method. So the bean object created for the vendor will be injected into the invoice class via the setter method. So here the bean object created for this vendor, and it will be injected in this invoice class. Okay. Next one is constructor based injection. So when the Spring container provides values to variables using the um, uh, parameterized constructor, then we call it as the constructor injection, right? So again, I am saying like, or repeating, like when the Spring container provide the values to the variables using the parameterized constructor, then it is known as the constructor based means constructor injection. So Spring container uses this parameterized constructor to create the object in this case. So when we use this auto-word annotation, so it used on top of the class constructor. So here you can see that this is the invoice class, right? So this invoice method is there, and this is, you can see the same name like the class. So this is the constructor. Inside that, parameter is also there. So this is parameterized constructor, and on that parameterized constructor method, we have added the AutoWord annotations. Okay, in the setter method, you have seen like on the setter method we have used the AutoWord annotations, and in the constructor also, like on the parameterized constructor method, we have used the AutoWord annotations. Okay, so this is basically known as the constructor based dependency injection. So here you, in this example, you can see, right, vendor class has been created using the component annotations. Hence, the Spring container will automatically detect it while starting up the application and will create a bin object for the vendor class. So further, when Spring container detects that the vendor bin object has been AutoWed, this is the vendor bin object, right? So this is you have seen like this is AutoWed into the invoice class constructor, means in this invoiced method. Okay, this is the constructor. So the bin object created for the vendor will be injected into the invoice class via the constructor. Okay, right? So this is the example for this constructor based injection. And after that, the field or property based injection. So what is that? So when the annotation AutoWord is used on the top of the field or property in the class, so this will be known as the field or property based annotation, sorry, injection. So here you can see in this example, like vendor class is already created using the component. The bin object created for this vendor class will be AutoWord and injected via the field vendor. So here this is private vendor. So vendor field is there and vendor object is created here. So on the field or this property, this AutoWord annotations is there. Okay, inside this invoice class. So in this case, while creating the invoice object, if there is no constructor or setter method is available to inject uh, the vendor bin, the container will use this reflection to inject vendor into invoice. Okay, so here you can see like in the invoice class, here also this field is present, but here also setter method is there. So it used the setter method where AutoWord annotations we have used. So in the constructor as well, in the inside this invoice class, it finds the invoice parameterized constructor, and that's why it on that on the top of that constructor method we have used the AutoWord annotations. But when inside the invoice class, means where the injection required, there it's not, when it's not found the proper setter method or proper any constructor method, then it basically use the field only. So on top of that field or property, the AutoWord annotations will be used, right? So then the next question is like, when to use the AutoWord required is false. So suppose a bean is not registered with the Spring container and we try to apply the AutoWord annotation on it, then the Spring will throw an exception because the required dependency is missing. So for that case, we can use the AutoWord required equals to false, right? To tell the Spring container that this dependency is optional. So on doing so, Spring will not throw any exception of the missing dependency. Okay. So suppose you have a table, you don't have any chair. So you will tell the person that there is no chair. Otherwise, when he will try to sit behind the table, then it will, I mean, the person will say like, where is the chair? So that is the exception, right? So whenever the bin is not registered in that Spring container, it basically the developer need to indicate that dependency is optional. Okay, otherwise Spring will throw the exception. Okay, so to avoid that one, we need to add the required equals to false beside the AutoWord annotations, right? So after that, how to inject the Java collections as a dependency in Spring, right? So this is also one of the important uh, implementation based question. right? For the experienced developers. So Java collections like list, set, map, properties, okay, as an example of the dependency injection. So first of all, let's create the example of bin class. So here this list collection bin class is created. Okay, now this private list of languages. Okay, this uh, collection type of dependency is created, and on top of that field, this auto-word annotations is created, right? So here this print language list method is there, and this system out.println list of languages. So now let's register the list collection bin in the configuration setup class. So here we have added the configuration on the list collection config uh, class, and then we have added the annotations, right? Right. So then this bin annotation is there, and then public list collection bin and get list collection bin. Through that we can get the collection of bins, and it will return new list collection bin, right? And also another bin is there, so which is list of languages. So it will just return this list of Java, Scala, Python. Okay. So this is basically the process to inject the Java collections as a dependency in the Spring. So first of all, create the bin class, and now just register the list collection bin in the configuration setup class. Okay. So this is your configuration, and here this is bin. So the first bin is there, then the second bin is also there. Okay. Now, like how to inject bin or object references as an element of a collection in Spring. So in this example, we have seen the injection of a collection where the elements are string, right? You here the elements are string, right? So here now we are going to look at a collection where the elements of the collection will be bin or object references. So, so just create the bin. So here we have created the bin. So my test bin. So here like private string name and public my test bin inside that string name. Okay. So now add a list of my test bin as a property. Okay. To the my collection bin class. So here my collection bin class, and then we have just added like auto-word required equals to false, and this private list my test bin list, this one my test bin. Okay. So after that this is one method like to print the bin list. So after that just let's create a configuration class and create some bins of type my test bin as below. So here this is configuration class collection config, and here also the first bin object is means first method is like get first object, and here this is returning the my test bin like bin one. Okay, here you can see that it's passing the string name. Okay, so the first one is here bin one, and the second one is here bin two. Okay, and then the bin like bin three. Okay, then other methods can be there. So these are the process basically. So one more thing I can say, like if you just want to add some order according to that, then also you can do, means you can also add the order annotations also as well. Okay. So inside the bean, means under the bean, you can also add the annotations like at the rate of order. I am setting the bin one order as 1. Okay. Okay. So it will be executed second as it will be started from 0. So just bin 2 I am setting as 0, right? So this is 0, and then this is 2, means this is third. Okay, you also can set the order annotation as well. Okay, cool. So order annotation basically, um, we are giving like for the injection order. Okay, like bin 2 will be injected, like I'm saying, where is bin 1? Yeah, so here order is 0. Okay, so bin 2 will be injected first, then bin 1 will be injected. Okay, as order is 1 here, then bin 3 will be injected as order 2 is here. Okay, okay, so we can also set the injection order as well. Okay, so the next question is like, what are the benefits of the dependency injection? Okay, so the dependency injection helps in achieving loose coupling between the objects, so which is required for the objects, means for the programming, which is the important feature, loose coupling. Okay, next is dependency between objects becomes loosely coupled, so it helps the developers to test the module by injecting the dependent mock objects, for example making use of Spring Mockito. Next, like when the objects are independent of each other and can be injected, the scope of code reusability also increases. Okay, and also like it makes the code more readable. We don't have to look through all the code to see what dependencies we need to satisfy for a given component, so they are all visible in the interface, right? Next is, what are the disadvantages of the dependency injection? So as it offers the loose coupling, so it concludes increasing the number of classes and interface. So this is one complex thing. And the second thing I can say, like while implementing the dependency injection, so Spring Container takes the control rather than the developer. Okay, so hence it becomes difficult for the developers to learn how things work in the background. So according to the learning aspect and the code complexity, so these are the disadvantages. Okay, so when you will get some optimal approach, then complexity will increase, right? So these are basically the disadvantages, but uh, most of the things like your applications will be faster. Okay, so when to use the setter injection and when to use the constructor injection. So this is the most important question in the context of the Spring Dependency Injection, and there are high chances of being asked in any interview. So various scenarios are there. So what is the better approach, like to use the setter injection, otherwise the constructor injection? Okay. So basically, the constructor injection is the preferred approach when all the bin properties of a Spring Bean classes are required to participate in dependency injection. For instance, if a Spring Bean class has 5 bin properties that all the participate in the dependency injection, a single constructor with the 5 parameters can do that task. Like in contrast, using the setter injection would require 5 setter methods. Okay, so whenever all the dependencies will require, so for that case, means when all that dependencies for a class will participate in the dependency injection, so for that time, constructor injection will be preferable. Otherwise, you will need to create many setter methods, right? But setter injection is the recommended approach when the bin properties of a Spring Bean class are optional to participate in the dependency injection. Okay, like here, like 5 properties are there for a class, but 2 are required for the dependency injection. Means 2 are injected. You need to require, means you require 2 dependencies. So for that case, you can create 2 setter methods easily, right? So for that case, this will be best. So I will say like setter injection is the recommended approach when bin properties of a Spring Bean class are optional to participate in dependency injection, and the number of properties that participate may vary. So like if I will give you one example, like when the Spring Bean class has five bin properties, okay. So at most five setter methods are needed. On the other hand, achieving the same result using the constructor injection, it will requires like 5 factorial, means so 5 into 4 into 3 into 2 into 1, like 120 overloaded constructors you will require for that. Yeah, so that case setter method or setter injection will require. Okay. So now, are there any disadvantages to dependency injection in Spring? So yeah, dependency injection is a powerful and extensively used technique in the Spring framework, but however, it has its own set of possibilities, advantages, and challenges. So one of the disadvantages can be the complexity of configuration, what I have already said. So in larger Spring-based applications, the configuration for dependency injection can become complex, especially when dealing with the large number of beans and their dependencies. So this complexity can sometimes make the configurations hard to maintain. Okay. So according to that situation, means according to that scenario, the means the complex dependency cycle. So this is the disadvantage, I can say. Otherwise, it's good. Okay. So just learn more things and ask your doubts in the comment section. If you have any other queries, okay, just do like, share and subscribe channel if you like the content, and just you can visit all the lectures. It will be beneficial for you as well. Thank you. So don't forget to like, share and subscribe.